Hello everyone, Jacob here. In today's conversational expression, we're going to be talking about this expression to a certain extent, or even to a certain point, or even to a certain degree. And in Korean, this means 어느 정도는, or in some cases you will translate it to 어느 정도까지. Alright? And usually we use it at the beginning of a sentence, but actually you can use it at the end of a sentence as well. So let's look at a couple examples. But first, I just want to say that it's very similar to another expression that is used a lot. We say in some ways. All right. So it's kind of used to talk about how something is true in some ways, only in some ways. So let's look at our first example. To a certain extent, everyone is a bit racist. What does racist mean? 인종차별적이에요. Alright? So I think that this is true. Everyone is a little bit racist. Everyone has thought maybe something racist before, or maybe even said something racist, or had some kind of racist feelings at one point. I think this is just part of being human. And in this sentence, you could change it to in some ways. We could just use this expression right here, in some ways. So basically, I'm not saying that everyone is racist. I'm just saying that everyone is a little bit racist, kind of to a certain extent, in some ways. All right, let's look at a second example. This is also kind of just a good phrase that you can memorize. I agree with you. I agree with you to a certain extent. So in the first example, we used it at the beginning of the sentence. Here we're using it at the end of the sentence. I agree with you to a certain extent, or I agree with you in some ways, means I agree with you on certain points, but I also disagree with you on certain points. So I agree with you to a certain extent. I don't fully, completely, 100% agree with you, but maybe, mostly I agree with you. So that is how we use to a certain extent, kind of to mean 어느 정도는. Now there's kind of a second way to use this, and it's more to talk about how something is limited, okay? How something is limited. So let's go down and let's look at a couple examples. So our first example is related to doing the dishes. When I was living in Los Angeles, I had 3 roommates and I was the only one who did the dishes, which is a really bad situation. I got really frustrated. And I was willing to do the dishes. In fact, I was willing to do the dishes probably more than the others, and that was fine. I was willing to do the dishes, but only to a certain extent. So you could say that I was willing to do the dishes to a certain extent. I could do them every day, but I didn't want to do them every day if my roommates weren't doing them at all. So it's limited. My willingness to do the dishes is limited. I was only willing to do the dishes to a certain extent. And often we will add only. I was willing to do the dishes only to a certain extent, or I was only willing to do the dishes to a certain extent. All right. So let's look at one last example, and then we'll wrap up this lesson. I can speak Korean. As you've probably noticed, I can speak some Korean, but to be honest, I can speak Korean only to a certain extent. I can speak Korean to a certain extent. I have no problems kind of explaining things when I'm in class or when I'm doing these videos. I can explain certain things by using some Korean words. I can have a pretty basic conversation with people, but if we start talking about politics or some kind of difficult topic, or if we start talking for a really long time, you're going to realize that I can speak Korean just to a certain extent. My Korean is limited, all right? And when you're using it with this kind of meaning, I think the better translation is probably 어느 정도까지, all right? And in this kind of situation, you want to put it always at the end of the sentence, or basically after the verb, okay? So I hope you understood all of that. I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and I will see you next time.